These are the top stories. Witnesses absent as INEC's defense of Tinubu's victory starts on shaky note. Atiku's aide urges Tinubu to reward Wike with ministerial appointment for rigging polls. Opposition attacks federal government as presidency lambasts EU poll observers. Kidnapped oil workers regain freedom. Details now. News at 12 begins with the Independent National Electoral Commission today in Abuja, beginning its defense of the February 25 presidential election on a shaky note, with none of its three witnesses present at the Presidential Election Petition Court. Now, contrary to the scheduled activities of the court, INEC, which conducted the disputed election and billed to open defense, came to the court without any witnesses. Its lead counsel and former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Abubakar Balarabe Mahmood, informed the court of his plan to call three witnesses to counter the allegations of the Labour Party and its presidential candidate, Peter Gregory Obi. He, however, lamented that none of the witnesses was in court due to domestic reasons for him to open the defense. The senior lawyer pleaded with the court to bear with him and applied for adjournment of his defense. However, lead counsel to Peter Obi, Dr. Levi Uzoku, who is also a senior advocate of Nigeria, expressed shock and surprise with the conduct of the electoral body. He told the court that the INEC lawyer ought to have taken him into confidence before the commencement of the proceedings. However, Chief Wale Olanipeku, a senior advocate of Nigeria who stood for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and Prince Lateef Olusukomi Fagbemi, a senior advocate of Nigeria as well, who represented the All Progressives Congress, did not object to request for adjournment of INEC's plea for the base, or rather for the case to be shifted. The presiding judge, Justice of the Court, Justice Haruna Simon Samani, subsequently fixed a new date of July 4 for the electoral body. Now, it is not our responsibility to talk about cases while they are still being presided over in court, but there are some discrepancies here as to what the process is, and I actually have Mr. Elvis Elimehele via the telephone to let us objectively look at this circumstance as it has prevailed today. Mr. Elvis, good afternoon and welcome to the World News at 12.
Good afternoon, Esther. How are you doing?
I am fine. A good Monday it is, indeed.
Yeah,
okay, so
back for your
Mr. Elvis, it is not something strange if you possibly come to court and there is an adjournment of a matter, either due to the very thing that made a lot of people converge at the court is absent. And in this case, it's concerning INEC, right? Now, based on the last sitting they had last week, they were meant to present their witnesses today, the witnesses who were meant to defend them at the court, three of them. And the lawyer, that is the person representing INEC, has said that due to domestic reasons, three of the witnesses were absent. Not one, not even two, but three of them were absent today. Now, one would think, was this deliberate to actually stall the proceeding? Or possibly they know that if none of them comes, there may be no sitting for it today, so the case will be adjourned. And secondly, the lawyer of the Labour Party said that the INEC's lawyer ought to have taken them in confidence, meaning notified them that, oh, my witnesses are not going to be around today, obviously, and this is the situation. However, the APC's lawyer, that is the APC's representative, did not have any issue with the adjournment. They did not have any issue with the fact that the witnesses who were meant to defend INEC were not in court. So it seems like the APC and INEC are usually in tandem. Sometimes whenever INEC objects to something, the APC too objects to it. Sometimes when INEC defends something, the APC too is in the same defense of that. In this particular situation, do we think what took place in the court is normal? 3 of the witnesses did not appear due to domestic reasons that were not cited. And the lawyer of the Labour Party is saying they were not taken into, they were not even taken into cognizance. They did not recognize them to let them know beforehand that this is the case on point. Rather, everybody came and sat, and then the INEC representative is saying their witnesses are not available. Do we see that unavailability as a case of convenience?
It is not a normal situation, Esther. I must tell you that it does not know the implication of what Nigerians are going through at the moment. Nigerians are asked for this case to be dispensed so that we know the way forward. And for INEC, the umpire of this election that brought these disputes that are in the court, to also be drawing back the wheel of movement of this case now, it is a shame. I want to believe that if they actually know that they are the cause of why Nigerians, these election petitioners are in court, they should have been able to even find a way to hasten up the cases in the court so that these cases can be dispensed and Nigeria can move forward as expected. Nigerians are anxious to see the end of these cases in the court so that we actually know the next way forward. So I don't want to believe that INEC do not know the importance of these cases in the court. So they must have to look for every means not to drop back the wheel of the flow movement case before the tribunal. So I want to believe that since they have been summoned for, adjourned for tomorrow they will have to appear in court so that they do the needful. How can the 3 of them just be absent at the same time? Not even 1, not even 2. And the lawyers from the Labour and the others that were not even informed. So it is a shame, but INEC must have to put them.
In fact, Mr. Elvis, the lead counsel for the Labour Party, that is Livy Uzoku, expressed shock and surprise with the conduct of the electoral body. Obviously, they were not in the know at all, and there's a process to this. For example, if the Labour Party had actually done something like this, where there was a new development to the case as was presented before the actual time, obviously, there would have been some information carried on to the various counterparts in court. A paper would have been circulated to say, oh, this is the situation, so everyone is already in the know. But what the Labour Party lawyer is saying that they were surprised, when that particular admittance came from the INEC's lawyer. We're not putting any blame game on anybody, of course, that's for certain. But the question is, will we see more of these tactics play at the petition election tribunal? Are we going to see more of these tactics?
This will serve as the last. We will not want to see more of this. You should remember that there is INEC that brought us to this situation we are, and they should remember that this case has a time frame for it to be dispensed according to the Electoral Act.
Yes.
So they have to work according to the Electoral Act to make sure that these cases are dispensed within the time stipulated. And they should also remember that it is this part of this lackadaisical attitude from their INEC that led to where we are now. So they should not play also that prank they play with the transmission of results that led to a presidential election result that led to where we are now. That's where Nigerians will not take this. So the judges that are in this matter should send note of warning to INEC and whoever their representatives are that they are not here to joke. This is a serious matter, and they should also handle it with the seriousness Nigerians are looking onto it.
Now, Mr. Elvis, I'm sure we've been getting feelers of how the cases have been going on at the Election Petition Tribunal on a daily basis. We've been getting reports on various online media platforms. Those who have their representative at the court, giving us feelers on what's going on there, and we've been carried along. But it almost feels like the momentum has dropped. That's the body language sort of with how things are going. Some would have said that the proceeding shouldn't take this long. If all the documents that have been, each of these representatives or each of these defendants have already in play, that it shouldn't take this long, and momentum is dropping. But one would think that with this process, with how long the case has been, or rather with how supposedly prepared each of these lawyers are, that whether their documents and their witnesses already ought to be on ground when they are called for, they come in. How come today is one different day? Where 3 of them, 3, not 1, 3 of them are absent, stalling it. Or is it possible that we made a situation? How do we know that these 3 witnesses will be available tomorrow?
That's why I said the judge must face penalties for that. And they should remember that the tribunal judges have stopped their normal routine, their respective courts. that is halted. People are suffering that delay in the just of their own cases because of this election petition tribunal. All other those appeal court judges that are there in the tribunal are no longer sitting in their respective court. Those cases that they are supposed to attend to in those courts are just dormant because of this period. So INEC must be able to, at this junction, know that what Nigerians are going through is serious, and they must also have to act seriously to make sure that these cases are dispensed as quickly as possible. So this idea of not coming to court, if you have delayed taxes, like what they did in the election, the judges must be able to call them to order for them not to play pranks on Nigeria's anxiety that we are going through at the moment. Yes.
All right. Okay, so here is also, considering this same February 25 election, which we have the Labour Party and the PDP already at the election petition tribunal defending, you heard the EU reports that circulated concerning their own take on, how the elections took place. And when they gave their report, it is not surprising for us to get a couple of reactions from the quarters of the APC, the PDP, as well as the Labour Party. Now, Dele Alake, whom we know, or Alake rather, Dr. Dele Alake, who is a spokesperson to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, noted that the winner of the election had earlier raised an alarm on the plan by the United European Union to discredit the election. Alake is saying in his response to the report of the EU that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has raised an alarm that the EU intended to discredit the election. Now, no one knows how he got to know, but he is reading in that note, taking people's mind back, that the president had earlier issued a statement of the fact that the European Union intends to discredit the just concluded the February 25 election. And in that statement, Dele Alake is saying that the government rejects the remark of the EU, which discredited the country's 2023 election. Now, in the message, he said that, the nation was alerted sometime in May through a press statement to the plan by a continental multilateral institution to discredit the 2023 general elections conducted. He also went ahead to say that the main target was the presidential election, clearly and fairly won, according to Daly, by the then candidate of the All Progressives Congress, that's the person of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now he's stressing again that the election was peaceful, fair, and credible. And for emphasis, he's reiterating that the 2023 general elections, most especially the presidential election won by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was credible, was peaceful, was fair, and the best organized general elections in Nigeria since 1999. Now, based on the reality on ground and the outcome from what transpired at the February 25 election, at the March 18 election, at the supplementary elections that took place on April 15, and the cases already piling at the election petition tribunal, with Dele Alake's response, is there a correspondence? Can one actually say that what he's saying is on the fair ground, based on what we can realistically experience or see?
Esther, it's very unfortunate in this part of the world, especially Nigerians, we don't like to listen to advice. We don't like to hear the truth. What EU observers mission said is not different from what some of us who were also local observers saw in the field. I was an observer in that election.
Yes.
These are some of the things we also observe in the field. There's nothing different from me. The Yaga Africa has also said the same thing. Civil society organizations have said the same thing. But the issue here is Nigerians don't want to listen to advice because we don't want to change. We want to, cast that trajectory and remain in it. What these people said, these people offer some advice, and they saw some of the infractions, which you are now also observed, which the media have been happening on since the election took place until where we are now. When the EU, they should remember that the EU was invited by Nigerian government to come and observe this election. They are not busybody. They didn't just come in here on their own because they felt that Nigeria invited them so that they could observe it and give them the adequate truth and be able to tell the world how the election fared. Now they've done their job.
All right, Mr. Elvis, Dele is saying that he would like to know how did the EU How did they reach the conclusions in the submitted final report with the very limited coverage of the elections by the observers? They say that the observers did a limited observation of the elections and that without doubt that the United European Union relied more on rumors, hearsay, cocktails of prejudiced and uninformed social media commentaries and opposition talking heads. Now, he also went ahead to say that he is convinced that the EU called the final report on its recent election a product of a poorly done desk job that relied heavily on few instances of skirmishes in less than 1,000 polling units out of over 176,000. What Dele is actually saying is that the EU did not do an objective coverage of the February 25 general elections, and that their coverage was based on reports gotten on social media, whereby some opponents of the APC really ran through by currying it to seem like the elections were not properly done. Meanwhile, the elections were properly done. Now, one would say what Dele is saying is not different from what Lai Mohammed, the former Minister of Information, actually stated when he went to Washington. But then you know that there were disparaging remarks. The same Lai Mohammed went to Washington and said that INEC deliberately did not upload the presidential results on the IRF portal. Meanwhile, Mahmoud Yakub said there were issues, there were glitches on the IRF portal on that said day. Now, Dele is coming to say that the elections were granted as fair as possible. So when you hear these scenarios of these different individuals, is it a deliberate attempt to confuse, or should Nigerians be patient and wait to see how the court and the documents to defend these cases presented by the Labour Party, the APC and the PDP possibly eventually tell us how the elections went? Is that what we should look forward to now?
Yeah, I think Mr. Dele Aleke is not really too informed about the workings of the EU observers mission. My own organization, GIPAN, Guild of Public Affairs Analysts of Nigeria, we partner with them. When they came, they visited us in our secretariat. They told us their work. That most of the local observers also feed the EU, like he's saying that they limited coverage. They also feed the EU with what they saw. Before, since 11th of January, the EU observer mission were already in Nigeria, and they left here 11th of April. You can imagine the number of months they stay. If he is saying that they were not on ground, they are relying on social media, well, I think that is not correct. These people came and they had observers in all these days, and most of these observers also partner with the local observers to work with them. So whatever you are saying there is not different from what you and I saw on the field. These people came and stayed more because they want to give the world the credibility of Nigeria election. And they also want to tell Nigerians, this is where you are wrong, this is you can come out of it and make amendment, in subsequent elections. Because, if now APC favors them, that's why you are they are saying EU did not do the right job, and then what they did is relying on social media.
Social media reports.
I know to what that the team of the EU mission I saw that visited us in our secretariat, they are credible. These are people that covered the election. In fact, they told us all the countries of the world they covered the election. And EU have been in this for decades of years, doing this all over the world. Nigeria we don't want to hear advice and listen to the truth. But if when millions of dollars for them to spend in the election, they hurriedly grab it and commend them. But when they now tell them the money we get for you or what it's not adequately carried out the way we want it, they now begin to pour at it. You see, it's a one-way thing. Nigeria always like that one-way judgment. If it is favoring them, they grab it with all their chest. But if it's not favoring them and favoring their interests, they begin to give it, all manner of names and all manner of concern in each final report that they gave to Nigeria. Nigerian government and INEC do not want to shift. They don't want to shift from this trajectory, and they don't want to accept the truth. That's all this banter you are seeing left, right, center from government.
Now, Mr. Elvis, do you think that this case starting off like this for INEC and their 3 witnesses absent in court could affect anything? Although they're meant to come to court tomorrow, but it's creating a precedence for speculation, for doubt, that possibly there's something underhand, at play. Do we think there's something underhand at play?
Yeah, it's one of the things that the EU actually said, and what Nigerians are actually talking about is that we have lost interest in the credibility of INEC. Part of that losing of interest is what we are still seeing that still played out today. Today, three of the officials are supposed to be in court to begin to defend what the election that was conducted by them are not in court. Those are part of the things we are talking about. They are making Nigeria to lose that interest in them. That credibility that we gave them, that they sold to us before the election began, 2023 election began, it has completely dropped. If you do a profile of INEC now, you discover that INEC cannot even get up to 20% again. Nigerians have lost interest, even in subsequent elections. But what we are looking at Nigeria, we are looking at before 2027, there should be a rejuvenated INEC that people, the headship of INEC should have been changed, and maybe amendments into the electoral act where we see some of these infractions came in this 2023 election, so that the repetition of this one will not occur again in 2027 general election. So we should be able to tell ourselves the truth and be able to accept criticism from our observers and find a way to amend it and move forward. Right. Fairer, free and fairer and credible election, subsequently.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Elvis Alimehele, for your contributions on the World News at 12. I sincerely appreciate that. Now, we still have all the news stories here, whereby the standard bearers of the People's Democratic Party in the 2023 election, Atiku Abubakar, and his Labour Party counterpart, Peter Obi, have lampooned the presidency for rejecting the European Union final report on the February 25 presidential election. The EU Observer Mission in its report faulted the polls owing to enduring systemic weaknesses. The election outcome has been disputed by the PDP and the Labour Party and their candidates, who allege that the polls were not credible. But the presidency, in a statement on Sunday, refuted claims by the European Union that the election which produced President Bola Tinubu was flawed, describing the report by the EU observers as a poorly done desk job. The chief observer of the EU election observation mission, Barry Anders, had in a press briefing last week noted that the election exposed enduring systemic weaknesses and therefore signals a need for further legal and operational reforms to enhance transparency, inclusiveness, and accountability. He said the shortcomings in the law and electoral administration hinder the conduct of a well-run and inclusive election and damage trust in the Independent and National Electoral Commission. And so in the World News at 12, we have whereby Frank Shaibu, the Special Assistant on Public Communication to the 2023 People's Democratic Party presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar, has accused President Bola Tinubu of planning to reward the immediate past Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike with a ministerial appointment. Shaibu said the ministerial appointment was to appreciate Wike for rigging the presidential election in Rivers State to favor Tinubu. He insisted that the results in states like Rivers showed that the last presidential election was far from credible. In a statement he signed, Shaibu said it was tragic that Tinubu was planning on rewarding Wike with a ministerial portfolio despite the pending petition against the former governor, which has attracted nearly 300,000 votes. And stories outside the shores of Nigeria, riots and fronts appear to be calming after 5 days of violent protests in response to the shooting of a teenager, Nahel M, during a police traffic stop. More than 150 people were arrested on Sunday night, compared with more than 700 the night before. Over the last few days, there have been numerous calls for the violence to stop, including from Nahel's family. Mayors have called for people to rally outside town halls on Monday to protest the violence and looting. In Nanterre, Nahel's hometown, Mayor Patrick Jari said he was pleased the violence had subsided, but added that we shouldn't lose sight of the incident that sparked the situation and the continued need for justice. The mayor of Reims told a crowd of several hundred people that the rioters had looted the businesses that they visit every day and urged the state to be firm so that the republic can be preserved. And now to wrap up the World News at 12, here again are the top stories. You heard that a witness had been absent at INEC's defense of Tinubu's victory starts on a shaky note. Atiku's aide alleges Tinubu to reward Wike with ministerial appointment for rigging polls. Opposition attacks FG as presidency lambasts EU poll observers. Kidnapped oil workers regain freedom. And on stories outside the shores of Nigeria, France riots ease as mayors call anti-violence rally. That is a wrap on the World News at 12 right here on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Esther